the entire structure of the entire universe, we could say, is as follows. At the very center of reality, there is this infinite singularity of pure, undifferentiated potential that contains absolutely everything combined inside of it until everything cancels out into just a pure nothingness. That's the Godhead. So there's that. And then what there is there not just that, but there's everything around it. So sort of think of it like our solar system. You have the sun in the middle, then you have Earth and other planets orbiting at various distances, asteroid belts and so forth around the sun. The sun is sort of the thing that holds our solar system together. So that's kind of like how reality is as a whole. At the center of it that holds everything together is this pure formless Godhead. Then as you get out from the center, you become less whole, less complete, and more finite, more fragmented. So consciousness in its most complete form is in the very middle here. And then as you move out to the sides, consciousness fragments itself in various ways, and it can fragment itself in an unlimited number of ways. So the periphery of this circle goes out forever. There's no end. It's boundless in all directions. But at the center of it is that singularity. And the further you get out here, consciousness becomes more and more fragmented and less whole. It becomes a smaller piece of the whole. So imagine that here at the very center, if we had a vase, this is a complete, perfect vase, not a single crack. And then as you get out towards the edge here, this vase gets more and more cracked and more and more cracked and more and more cracked until pieces start breaking off. Those pieces break off, and then those pieces themselves crack and break off. And those crack and break apart and break apart and break apart until you get little tiny little fragments of the original vase, such that this tiny fragment doesn't even look like it's part of the vase anymore. It's like a single atom of the original vase. Very, very disconnected. So you see what this model is modeling is simply the degree of disconnectedness or incompleteness of consciousness. So consciousness is able to fragment itself out to infinity, and then it's also able to recollect itself, recollect all the pieces, merge them together into that single, unified, complete, perfect whole. And that, in a nutshell, is what reality is. It's that. And what that is God, that is consciousness, that is love, that is oneness. See, the oneness is so absolute that it encompasses not just pure oneness in its perfect, form as a vase, complete vase, but even all the fragments of it as well. That's the key you have to realize with oneness. And since God has no beginning and no end, because infinity has no beginning and no end, infinity has no outer edge, no inner edge. Infinity has no center, because every point in infinity is its center. That means that God is not necessarily guaranteed to always be this singularity. I mean, it is that, but it's also everything surrounding it, the entire sort of debris field around the singularity. Now, this entire debris field, this is what we call living, conscious beings, like animals and humans. So you as a human, me as a human, and maybe your pet dog or something, or pet cat, we exist somewhere away from the center. And the question is, how far away from the center are we? The closer to the center we are, the more godlike we are, the more conscious we are. As we raise our consciousness more and more and more, we approach the center more and more and more, just like, if a planet or some satellite is orbiting the sun, if we adjust its velocity, the orbit will sort of, spiral inwards until it hits the sun. And the closer it gets to the sun, the hotter and the brighter it gets. The further away it is from the sun, the colder it is, especially out on the very periphery of the solar system. So those beings who are very, very unconscious, like maybe an ant or a butterfly, they're very far from the center. Those human beings, for example, who behave like animals, terrorists, murderers, thieves, criminals, and so forth, they're part of mankind. Overall, mankind is much closer to the center than an animal. But mankind, there's an enormous range of consciousness that mankind can have. Some humans are very saintly and very godlike, and some are criminals and despicable monsters and devils. And so those people, the only thing that separates a devil, tyrant, dictator / criminal from a saint or from someone like Jesus Christ or the Buddha is simply their degree of consciousness and how close they are to the center, their degree of wholeness and completeness. And so if you take a living being and you inch closer and closer and closer and closer to the center, eventually what happens is that as it gets closer, all of its selfish tendencies and all of its fear and attachments, they get burned away by the light of consciousness until eventually you merge into the singularity, you become completely selfless, and you become identical with God. You become the Godhead. You become complete, infinite, omniscient, all-powerful. But as you get further away from the center, the opposite happens. You lose your power. You become selfish. You become finite. You become limited. You're less and less able to manipulate the world, and your will is less and less able to be manifested directly into reality.